Buckle up for a deep dive today into the life and crimes of Joseph Danks.
The Koreatown slasher.
That's right, the Koreatown slasher.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you're thinking, another serial killer story, but trust me, this one is different.
Yeah, that's what.
His Wikipedia page is fascinating and disturbing.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, Danks once attacked his own lawyer in court with a makeshift knife.
I mean, that really kind of gives you a glimpse into his mental state, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just the chaotic path his life took.
Yeah, just the fact that, he's facing these serious charges for murder and then attacks the person who's supposed to be defending him.
Well, and that's what's so fascinating about this deep dive is that, it's not just the typical serial killer.
Right. Yeah.
It brings up all these other questions, the nature of evil, the role of mental illness,
Yeah.
and how society fails people like Danks.
Yeah, and I think starting with that courtroom attack, I mean, it's almost unbelievable.
It really is.
Like, how do you even get to that point?
Well, I think if we look at his background, it starts to make a little more sense.
Yeah.
So, born in 1962, early life was marked by instability and neglect.
Okay.
His parents, a 42-year-old man and his 17-year-old nanny, struggled with addiction.
Oh, wow.
And Danks himself was exposed to drugs and alcohol from a very young age.
So already.
Yeah, a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And there are even accounts of him being locked in a drawer by his mother as a baby.
What?
Oh,
Locked in a drawer. I
Yeah.
mean, that's...
I know, it's hard
to even
to
imagine
Yeah.
the impact that would have on a child.
Absolutely. I mean, that's severe early childhood trauma.
Right.
And that has profound impact on brain development
Yeah.
and potentially, leading to a lifetime of struggles with mental health.
Right.
And for Danks, things only got worse as a teenager.
Oh, really?
He suffered a head injury.
Okay.
And after that, the signs of mental illness became more pronounced.
Oh, wow.
Paranoid hallucinations, bizarre behavior, all kind of classic signs of a mind in turmoil.
So you've got this really troubled childhood, a head injury, and now escalating signs of mental illness.
Right. And it just makes you wonder, could things have been different?
Yeah.
What if he had received, proper mental health care and support?
Right. Like, what if somebody had intervened at that point?
Exactly. And that's where the question of societal failures comes into play.
Yeah.
It's impossible to say for sure,
Right.
but it's a question worth pondering.
Yeah. It's like, how many other Joseph Danks are out there that we just don't know about?
That's exactly right. And that's a systemic issue that we as a society really need to address.
For sure.
But for Danks, these missed opportunities would have really tragic consequences.
Okay.
His criminal activity started with petty offenses,
Mm.
drug possession, and vagrancy.
Right.
But by late 1986, when he arrived in Los Angeles, his life was about to take a much darker turn.
This is where the Koreatown slasher comes in.
Exactly.
Right.
In January 1987,
Mhm.
Danks embarked on this terrifying spree,
Okay.
fatally stabbing 6 homeless men.
And what's so chilling is like the seemingly random nature of it.
It really is.
It wasn't targeted. It was just sort of like
It was like anybody's.
opportunity.
Yeah,
And the weapon he used was so mundane.
I know, simple kitchen knife.
Right.
Yeah,
But I think that's so revealing.
I think so too.
This guy who had a chaotic upbringing, possibly involving abuse,
Right.
chooses this weapon that symbolizes domesticity.
It's almost like bringing a twisted sense of order to the streets,
Right. Yeah.
using this familiar object to inflict violence on people that he perceived as other.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way to look at it.
And it makes you think about, like, what are the psychological implications
Yeah.
of using such an ordinary weapon for such brutal acts?
Yeah, for sure.
The contrast is stark.
Yeah. Really unsettling.
Yeah.
But thankfully, his reign of terror was cut short.
Yes, thankfully.
He was apprehended after a witness chased him down following his final murder.
Yeah, that took some real courage.
Yeah.
I mean, to stand up to somebody like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so once Danks was in custody, he confessed, and it just gives you a glimpse into this really troubled psyche.
Yeah. He readily admitted to the killings and expressed this just chilling hatred for homeless people,
Yeah.
calling them dirty and filthy.
It's just so sad
It really is.
because it reveals this, deep-seated prejudice and just complete lack of empathy.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, was this hatred a genuine sentiment?
Right.
Or was it a product of his mental illness?
Yeah.
A way to rationalize his actions?
Like, is it even possible to separate the two?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, and How much did his mental state influence his behavior during the trial?
Right, because things just get even more bizarre from here.
Okay, so let's get into that.
All right.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, his behavior in jail and during his trial takes us even deeper into this labyrinth of his mind.
Right.
Remember that makeshift knife used to attack his lawyer?
Yeah.
That wasn't just a random act of violence.
That was a symptom of a mind in complete freefall.
Let's dive into that next.
It's a wild story.
It really is. So we left off with Danks behind bars, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mental state deteriorating.
Yeah, that whole attack on his lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned it was more than just a random act.
Right. I mean, think about it. He's in a courtroom,
Right.
a place that represents law and order,
Yeah.
and he lashes out at the person who's supposed to be on his side.
Right.
I mean, it's a complete breakdown of rational thought.
It's like he doesn't even
Yeah, he's lost touch with reality.
understand the concept of a lawyer even being there to help.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how much his paranoia had taken over,
Right.
where everyone just seemed like a threat.
Yeah, like how do you even function in that world?
Well, that's what's so crucial about this point,
Yeah.
His actions, while horrifying,
Right.
they give us a glimpse into what it's like
Yeah.
to struggle with severe mental illness.
Right.
Possibly paranoid schizophrenia.
Imagine living in a world where everyone seems like an enemy,
Right.
where even your own lawyer is out to get you.
That's terrifying.
That's a terrifying thought.
It really is. And it makes that plea deal that he eventually accepted even more unsettling.
It really does.
He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty,
Right.
got life in prison.
Right.
But, I got to ask,
Yeah.
was he even capable of understanding what he was doing?
I mean, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Were the consequences of his plea something he could even grasp?
Right.
And that's a question that legal experts and psychologists, continue to grapple with.
Yeah.
This whole concept of mental competency
Right.
when you're dealing with such severe mental illness.
Right.
But, Danks' story doesn't end there.
Right. Of course, the murder of his cellmate, Walter Holt.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost unfathomable, right?
Mhm.
Someone already serving a life sentence
Yeah.
commits another murder.
And for seemingly like such a minor reason,
Did you know?
just wanted to
Yeah.
sell to himself.
It's like the rules of society.
Right.
The basic rules of human decency
Yeah.
just didn't apply to him.
Yeah, he was on a whole other wavelength.
Absolutely driven by impulses and compulsions
Right.
that defy all logic and reason.
Yeah. So this obviously sends him back to court,
Right.
now facing the death penalty.
And it's interesting,
It did. Yeah.
to compare the two trials.
Right.
In the first one, his erratic behavior,
Right.
the attack on his lawyer,
Yeah.
probably played a role in, his willingness to take the plea deal.
Like they just wanted to contain him.
Yeah, maybe there was a sense of like, we got to contain this guy,
Yeah.
regardless of his mental state.
Right.
But the second trial,
Yeah.
stakes were higher.
Right.
His mental illness seemed to hold less weight.
Yeah, like maybe they just saw him as beyond redemption at that point.
It's possible.
He had already proven that he was capable of violence.
Right? Even in a controlled environment.
Right.
And I think it's also important to remember, our understanding of mental illness
Right.
has evolved
For sure.
back then.
Yeah.
The connection between mental illness and violence wasn't as widely recognized
Right.
or accepted.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much of his behavior can we really attribute to mental illness?
Right. Was it a direct result of his paranoia,
Right.
his hallucinations?
Was there an element of choice?
Right. Was there evil?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that age-old debate.
Yeah.
Nature versus nurture,
Right.
personal responsibility versus the impact of mental illness.
Look at the tough one.
There's no easy answer.
Right.
But what we can say is that
Yeah.
Danks' case is a chilling example of how untreated mental illness
Yeah.
can have devastating consequences,
For sure.
both for the individual and for society as a whole.
It's a reminder that we can't just lock people away and forget about them.
Exactly.
We need to address the root causes,
We have to.
the systemic failures that led to these tragedies.
Has to.
Because even on death row, Danks' story continues.
It does. His appeals have been denied.
Right.
But California's moratorium on the death penalty,
Right.
leaves his fate kind of uncertain.
Right.
And his behavior in prison continues to be erratic.
Really.
Attacks on guards, setting fires,
Wow.
all signs that his mind is still in turmoil.
It's like he's trapped in this cycle of self-destruction.
It really is a tragic and disturbing picture.
It is, but
Yeah.
within that picture, I think there are lessons to be learned.
I think so too.
You know, Danks' story challenges us to look beyond the headlines,
Yes.
the sensationalism,
And a monster.
yeah, and see the human being.
Right. To recognize the signs of mental illness.
To advocate for better mental health care.
Absolutely better support systems.
Yeah, to acknowledge the societal factors that contribute to these tragic outcomes.
And that's where you, the listener, come in.
Okay.
You know, we've explored the depths of this case.
Yeah, the darkness, the complexities.
But now it's up to you
okay.
to take what you've learned and apply it to the world around you,
Okay.
to see the signs, to ask the questions,
Yeah.
to advocate for change.
To be more than just a listener.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be an active participant
Yeah.
in creating a more just and compassionate world.
We've been exploring the really twisted path of Joseph Danks' life.
Yeah, from his traumatic childhood to his horrific crimes.
And then his struggles even within the prison system.
Yeah, his behavior behind bars. I mean, really something.
And it would be so easy to just dismiss him as a monster.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, to label him evil and just kind of wash our hands of it.
Yeah, just forget about him.
But I think that would be a real disservice.
Yeah, to ourselves and to the larger issue.
Yeah, to the bigger picture.
You know, I mean, if we just reduce him to a label,
Right.
we miss out on learning from his story.
Right. And I think that's important because
But I think
his story is not unique, right?
No, not at all.
There are others out there
Countless others.
struggling with mental illness, poverty, trauma.
And whose cries for help go unanswered.
Exactly. So this deep dive is more than just a true crime story.
Right, it's a call to action.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to educate ourselves about mental illness.
Okay.
You know, we need to recognize the signs,
Yeah.
understand the challenges, and I think challenge the stigma
Yeah, for sure.
that still surrounds these issues.
And that's about having honest conversations, right?
Yes,
treating mental health
Yeah.
with the same kind of seriousness and compassion
Yes,
as
exactly.
physical health.
And advocating for better mental health care.
Right.
Support systems.
More resources, better access to treatment.
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is so many people who are struggling with mental illness end up in the criminal justice system.
Instead of the healthcare system.
Exactly.
And I think that's a real problem.
Oh, it is a huge problem.
So are we doing enough
Yeah, that's the question.
to prevent these tragedies?
We're providing adequate support.
You know, are we taking care of the most vulnerable?
It's a question we should all be asking.
And it goes beyond just mental health.
It does, you know.
It's about poverty.
Yeah, inequality.
All these systemic factors.
The cycles of violence and despair.
Dank's story is a reminder that we're all connected.
Yeah, we are.
His actions reflect a failure on multiple levels.
It's a failure of the individual society. Yeah.
And while we can't change the past, we can learn from it.
Absolutely.
Use his story as a catalyst for change.
To create a world that's more compassionate, more just, and more supportive.
It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone.
Yeah, even those who've committed terrible acts.
Remembering that hope and healing are possible.
Even in the darkest of circumstances.
Well, that's our deep dive into the life and crimes of Joseph Danks.
It's heavy stuff.
It's a lot to process.
But important.
It is important, and I hope you know it's left you with more than just a sense of horror.
Yeah, I hope so.
Or morbid curiosity.
Right.
You know, I hope it sparked a sense of urgency.
Yeah, to do more.
A desire to learn more, to be more.
Can make a difference.
Dank's story is not just about him, it's about all of us.
It really is.
You know, it's about the choices we make.
The systems we create.
The responsibility we have to each other.
We're all in this together.
So go out there, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep challenging the status quo.
And let's work together.
To create a world where tragedies like this become less frequent.
Absolutely.
Where hope triumphs over despair and where every individual has the chance to reach their full potential.
That's the goal.
Until next time, keep diving deep.